All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for lesson 5.1, long division. This is part A. You're going to have 3 different parts. Each one's going to introduce you to a different way to divide, which you'll get a chance to practice in class. And then when we go through all 3 parts, you'll get to choose which is your favorite one. So let's start with our I can statement. I can divide whole numbers by a 1-digit number using the place value sections method. So don't forget to put lesson 5.1 in the top of your math notebook and write your I can statement down. All right, so just as a quick review, we're going to look at parts of a division problem. So in this case, I've got 43 divided by 6 equals 7 with a remainder of 1. So let's identify what those different parts are, okay? So the number we're dividing by is called the divisor, okay? And that goes on the outside of the bracket, and it's the second number here, all right? The number inside the division symbol, or the division bracket, is called the dividend. That's the number we're breaking into groups, or breaking up in this case, okay? And the number on top of the division bracket is the quotient, or the answer. A lot of times you're going to have a remainder. That's down here at the bottom, but typically you'll see that number moved up here, remainder 1, 1/6. We'll talk about how to write those also as a decimal number as we move further into this unit. And as always, if any of this stuff you feel like you need to write it down to add some notes to yourself so you remember what these parts are, because you're going to hear me refer to them a lot as we work through this unit, okay? So the first thing we're going to start with is we're going to start with the place value sections method. This is also known as the rectangle method. It's going to look different from what I just showed you on the previous page, but that was really more to remind you of what the terms are. So the place value sections method allows us to work in a really clean way, and I really like this method. So the first thing we do is we put a rectangle out, okay? We put our divisor on the outside and our dividend in the inside, and then we divide. Okay, how many 7s go into 3,822? I don't know, and probably you don't either without a calculator, okay? But we're going to take this in chunks. So what we're going to do is we're going to say how many 7s go into 3? None. How about 38? Can I get 7s out of 38? You bet. I can get 5 of them. 5 times 7 is 35. I have 2 numbers that come after my 38 here. I've got right here, and I'm going to turn those both into 0. So instead of 5, I'm going to put 2 zeros after that. I'm going to have 500. 7 times 500 is 3,500. I subtract, I get 322. So what do I do now? I draw another rectangle. And I move my 322 up to the top. That is now the next portion of my dividend that I'm going to be working with. So 7 goes into 3. Nope, but it does go into 32 4 times. I've got 1 digit afterwards. That's just going to turn into a 0. So instead of 4, I'm going to have 40. So 7 times 40 is 280. I subtract, I get 42. I'm going to bring this up, and this time it works out nice. There isn't going to be a remainder because 7 goes into 42 6 times. Subtract, get 0. So now all I have to do with this method is I just have to add up the numbers across the top. That gives me 546. So the answer to this problem is 546. Let's look at another one. I've got 4,595 divided by 6. This one will have a remainder. Will be some leftovers. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again. And you may ask, how do you know that already? Well, because it ends in 5. And 6 will not go into that evenly. So we'll get to that in just a second. So we're going to do the same thing. 6 will not go into 4, but it will go into 45 7 times. So that's going to end up being 700 because I've got 2 digits after it. So 6 times 700, 4,200. Subtract, I get 395. I'm going to draw another box, move my number. How many 6s go into 39? Well, 6. I'm going to get a 5 here. I'm going to turn it into 0, so that's going to be 60. And 6 times 60 is 360. Subtract, that's 35. I'm going to bring that up. I got 35. That'll go in there 5 times. That's going to be 30. Subtract, I get 5. So I'm going to add up. 765 is the total. And I'm going to put my remainder 5 right at the end here. Okay, so I take this whatever's left, because 6 is bigger than 5. I know it can't go in there. We're going to put remainder 5. Now you could write that as a fraction as 5/6 for those of you who know how to do that, and that's okay as well. All right, so let's talk about how to check your answers. All right, so you can check all your division with multiplication. Okay, so if I got 5,000 or 3,822 divided by 7 equals 546, I can just simply multiply that out. Okay, so does this look familiar? This is the rectangle sections method, or the place value sections method for multiplication. Okay, I know that 7 times 500 is 3,500. 7 times 40 is 280. 7 times 6 is 42. Those look just like the numbers we looked at when we took our chunks out. When I add those together, I end up with 3,822. So I know my answer is correct. I can do the same thing here. It's a little bit different when we do it when we have a remainder like that, and I'm going to do this the standard method. Okay, but if you look right here, this remainder 5 is not a factor right now. What we do is we multiply 765 times 6 first. So when we do that, multiply that out, we get 4,590. Now we add our remainder to whatever the answer we come up with, and that's going to give us that 4,595, just like we had in the other problem. Okay, so that both of those answers are correct. That's an easy way to check. It doesn't take very long. Okay, so here are your practice problems for today. I do need you to do these the rectangle sections method. That's also what you're going to be practicing in class. So just play around with this a little bit and see how you do. Your guiding question for this lesson: is it important to check your answer with multiplication? I need you to be prepared to discuss that. And then I'd like you to create a problem of your own, like the ones in this video, for your classmates to solve. So single digit by 4 digit, okay? Ones times thousands would be a great practice problem for you to create for this, all right? And we will see you in class.